Hello everyone. So in the last video we discussed about security. So what are the ways to implement the security in Pega? Okay, so there are like 4 types we discussed, like data encryption, authentication, authorization, and auditing. Okay, so in today we are going to discuss about the authorization. Okay, even in the authorization, mainly we are going to discuss two things. Okay, one is the client-based access control and basic access control. Okay, so I hope you all know that there are two other types. Okay, role-based access control. Okay, and that is RBAC, RABC, and attribute-based access control. Okay, so that is role-based access control. And the third and fourth are the client-based access control and the basic access control. Okay, so role-based, attribute-based, client-based, and basic access. Now today we are going to discuss the later two client-based and basic access control, how we can implement in Pega. Okay, so if the application stores data that might be used to identify a person and you are subject to EU GDPR or similar regulations, use client-based access control to track process requests to view, change, or remove the data. Okay, so if you want to view, change, or remove the data, then we can do that. So how we can do that? So first of all, we need to identify the application, in which application you want to implement this client-based access control. And we need to list the data elements to protect. Okay, so which information you want to protect, that we need to be identified. So like PAN number, SSN, bank account number, address, so these things like that. And after listing down, list the identifier by which identifies the person. Okay, so if you are having some customer, how you are going to identify each and every customer, like the customer ID, otherwise by email ID or by social security number or PAN number or Aadhaar number. So like that we need to identify. And then we need to create the CBAC rules in class and rule set where the data is available. So in which class this information is available, that class we need to be identified. So in that class only we can do that. Okay. So now we need to create that. How we can create that? So to create these CBAC rules, we need to go to the records, security, and then client-based access rule. Let's get into Pega and see that. So in the records, so in the security, okay, we have something called client-based access. So if you click on that, we can see there are some existing client-based access rules are there. And also if you want, you can create your own access rule also. Okay, client-based access rule also. Okay, so now I am in the application of my Pega trial. Okay, so for this application, I have created one policy name. Okay, client-based. So to create new one, you can just create a new here. Okay, so the one which I already created. And when you're creating, as usual, you need to create the name of the rule. Okay, and then in which application you want to create, and the applies to class, the rule set. So this applies to class is not like work class. Remember, this applies to class is not a work class. This is the class in which the client details or else the information which you want to secure, that should be there. Okay, so now I have given this. Now in this, I want to secure the customer ID and then customer name. So these are the properties which are available in our class, in this class. So these properties, the Pega properties, nothing but, okay, these are nothing but Pega properties, and then external label. That means from the external, okay, how you are going to configure it. So that name you can give for each and every property. Okay, the property is the Pega property and then external name. Okay, and then external description. This is not a mandatory. And here it is having something called rectify and erase. So what do you mean by rectify and what do you mean by erase? That means based on this checkbox, okay, it is going to update the value or delete the value. So by default, it is going to have the read permission. And in case if you want to update the value of this customer ID, you can select this checkbox. In case if you want to give the delete permission also, then you can select this checkbox. Okay, you can select this checkbox. So here in this case, the customer ID, I don't want to delete. Okay, and the customer name I want to delete as well. So in that case, you can select this rectify to update both the values and erase for deleting this value. Okay, and then the activity. So to access the data, okay, to access the data from the database, so you need to create an activity. To modify the data, you need to create an activity. To delete the data, you need to create an activity. For example, again, if you see that there is something called here strategy results, client-based access control is there. You see here, PY request customer data is there, so which is going to be read it, and the rectify is there, which is going to update it, and erase is there, PY delete customer data. Okay, so to connect to the DB and then read, update, or modify, you need to have the activities for them, and then identifier mapping. Okay, so here the properties which you want to make it secure and which you want to modify or delete, you are going to give, but the record, how it is going to be differentiate, how it is going to modify, that will be done by this subject ID, which is the customer ID. So based on the customer ID, I'm going to take, and then either I want to modify, I want to delete, or I want to retrieve it. Okay, and then after that, okay, in case if you rectify, then only you can modify it, otherwise you cannot modify it. Okay, so after giving this one, okay, data elements and identifier mapping, okay, so we have given that client-based access. Now in this activity, as I told, the entire functionality will be there. So for example, request customer data. So here we are going to making it customer data. Okay, so this is the class which contains all the customer details here. Okay, and then here you can see the property set of those values. Okay, subject ID, PY value. Okay, and then dataset hyphen execute. Okay, by which it is going to be either modify or delete it. You see here. The dataset name is TX interaction history, and then browse by keys, or else only if you want to browse. Okay, all the requests, then you can give browse, and then if you want to save it, you can select the save option also. So how, based on the key here. So based on the key which I'm going to pass it. So you see here that value I'm going to set in here, and then I'm going to browse it. Okay, and then here I'm going to set the values. Okay, so some inclusion raw results, can delete all. So like that, I'm going to update some of the property values here. Okay, so this is the way we are going to modify or delete the values into the data set. Okay, that means into the DB. So this is the client-based access control. So we are going to create an instance of it, and then there we are going to specify which properties you want to make it secure, and then by which property you are going to be identifying it. Okay, so that is the client-based access rule, but select the applies to class and rule set. As I said, the applies to of this one should be the class where the user details are there. And here one more important thing is, in case if you want to see this, the developer should have the TZ can manage security policies privilege to his access group to see this category. Okay, so for this here, let's go to the access group. Okay, so in the access group, we will be having that. In the access group in general, we will be having the roles. Okay, under the roles, if you open there, we can give the privileges. Okay, so here we can give the privileges. So we can add a new privilege, and then we can give TX can manage data encryption. This must be there. If you don't have this privilege, then you cannot see this client-based access option here. This rule category, you cannot see under the security category. Okay, so you must add this, then only you can get this client-based access. Okay, so that is the one of the important thing we should remember. Okay, so that is the client-based access control. The next one is the BAC. Okay, basic access control. So to protect the application from unauthorized requests that originate from the user interface layer, such as the sections, custom controls, and harnesses. Okay, so even from the sections, custom controls, or harnesses, from there, if you want to apply this, if you want to protect the application, okay, then we can implement the basic access control. Okay, so how you can do that? So this unauthorized request will be blocked by defining 3 event rules. Okay, mainly there are 3 event rules: PZ secure features, PY show secure feature warnings, and then PY, block unregistered request. So these are the 3 when rules by which you can implement this basic access control. Okay, so let's get into that. Okay, so along with that, those 3 when rules, where exactly we need to modify means we are having something called PY client restricted functions. Okay, this is the data transform in which, okay, you must to specify that, okay, which function will be having the source, okay, and then which channel is going to be accessing the information, and then whether the channel can be restricted or else given the access. Okay, so here you see I'm going to appending marketing campaign. In case if you are having something called sales functionality, you can give the function sales. Okay, if you are having payroll functionality, you can give the payroll. Okay, and after that we need to update the page in the PY function info. Okay, PY channel info. Okay, if you expand that, for each and every channel it will be having that. You see, the first one is the SMS. SMS, is it restricted to access this value? No, so I have given the false. Okay, and then here for the email, so I have given false. That means through email also you can access, but through the phone, the restricted is true. Okay, the restricted is true. So that means through the phone you cannot access this data, but through the email or SMS you can access this data. Okay, you can access this data. So this is the one you have to have, and this is also, this rule also must be in your rule set, and along with that the class also should be belongs to your application class. Okay, so it can be your application class, and then to access this there is a Pega service connector is there, service REST connector is there. Okay, through this service REST you can execute that and see that. Okay, execute asynchronously. So this is the Pega default API. Okay, so then when you run this, okay, when you run these actions, run, okay, then here we need to pass mainly the application ID and then the client ID. Okay, if you see my application ID is my Pega trial and then my client ID. Okay, here you can see that my Pega trial is the application name. Okay, and then my operator ID if you give. Now if you run that, execute, see here the functions, the function description is marketing campaign, function name also marketing campaign. Okay, and then channel info, channel ID, email, channel description, okay, email, and the expiry. Okay, so I have given almost like a never-ending expiry of this, and then is restricted false, like that only for the phone. Okay, it is true, and then for the SMS, okay, it is false. So through the phone you can, the user cannot access it. Okay, so this API again you can refer, okay, maybe in the section or else in the harness or else in any of the custom controls. Okay, so this is the basic access control. Okay, so these are the 2 new authorization features which are given in the Pega 8, and the BAC is especially on Pega 8.5. Okay, so these are the 2 new features. Okay, so these when conditions by applying in the user interface, you can do that. You can apply the restriction to access the personal data. Okay, so that's all guys. So if you like this, okay, please like and share my video, and if you also think that it is useful for others, please share to your friends and others. Thanks guys, see you in the next video. Bye bye.